Have you ever wanted to make your very own Raimi Spider-Man mask at home? Well, in this tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to sew up your very own Raimi Spider-Man mask. This tutorial will cover a variety of things, including the puff painted Sharpie webs, as well as the pattern and as well as the fabric that you need. So I'll start off with that first. The fabric that I used for this mask was just a generic red spandex. You can find them on Amazon. You can find about a yard for like $15. But you will not need the full yard for this tutorial. You'll need maybe a quarter of a yard. For the pattern for this mask, the pattern was made by a guy named Bryan. I'll have a link in the description where you can download this pattern for free. And now with all of that out of the way, we'll talk a bit about the puff painting of this mask. So I'm puff painting right now on my makeshift light table. You can make a light table for really cheap. This is just a plastic tote bin with some LEDs inside and flipped upside down so that it basically has a bit of a raised area for the LEDs to go, and then you can put your pattern and your fabric on top, and then you can trace the puff paint webs. For the puff paint itself, this is just Tulip Slick black paint, and for the Raimi mask, you want to put down fairly thick webs. You don't want them to be super thin or else it won't have that cool urethane look that we're trying to replicate. As you can see, I'm going really slow because if you go slower, it is far easier to get a super thick line, and then you'll have a really nice looking final product. Another important thing to remember is to take breaks when you're puff painting. Don't rush it or else your hand might start to cramp, or you may start to rush your lines and they'll look sloppy. I normally paint decently small sections at a time, and that normally serves my puff painting very well. Here's just a close-up of me puff painting the web so you guys can get a better look at how thick the lines are, as well as how slow I'm going. This is in real time. I'll also speed it up in a minute just so we can get through this section so I can talk about the next part about the Raimi webs, which is the Sharpie method. I'll explain that in a minute. As you can see, I'm being super careful to just lay down a really thick line. That's really the key for the Raimi webs. Now let's talk a bit about the Sharpie method. So the Sharpie method was created, I think, by a guy named K.A. Cosplay Tech. I'm pretty sure he was the one that created this method. And this is just a great way to be able to get that Raimi look with your puff paint webs. As you can see, I'm using a silver Sharpie, and I'm basically just coloring the top edge of the puff painted webs. You want to make sure that your puff paint is fully dry, or else the Sharpie may start to mess them up just because you're kind of pressing into them. So give your puff paint a good, at least probably 5-6 hours to dry. The bottle recommends, I think, a full 12 hours before it's technically dry, but I'm impatient and I like to work on things, so. Anyway, as you can see here, I'm being pretty careful to only hit the tops. You obviously don't want to get any of the Sharpie on your fabric because that will not wash off and you'll be left with Sharpie on your mask. I kind of use the edge of the Sharpie for this technique as well because that really helps me only hit the top edge, and it helps the black puff paint to still really stand out. As well as if you use the side, it does give you a slightly more consistent line. If you would like to make your webs look even more raised, you can go over the black puff paint again with another layer of black puff paint, or you could also try and go over this black paint with silver puff paint. I've not tried this method personally, but I have seen some people that have done it, and it looks pretty good. This is just the method that I like. I think this looks really cool for that homemade Raimi mask look. Here's how it's starting to look when it's mostly done here. As you can see, you can still see the black puff paint underneath. It just looks really cool. This method actually works very well if you're trying to make a Spider-Man No Way Home Raimi mask. Because of the fact that those webs are slightly less raised, this actually looks very, very accurate to that movie. I absolutely adore how this looks. I think it looks so cool holding in the light, and yeah, I'm really happy with how this is looking. To sew up this mask, it's pretty beginner friendly. There's only realistically like 3 seams. However, they are all darts, so if you are a beginner, you may want to practice on a spare set of fabric. But for me, I use a zigzag stitch with a width of 2 and a length of 2, and I also use pins to help keep the fabric in place, as you can see from this footage. I also use a zipper foot to help me get closer to the web line. It also helps to not smush down your webs if you're worried about that, so that comes down to personal preference. If you're just starting out sewing, I would recommend using the regular foot, but if you are slightly more advanced, I'd recommend for sewing Spider-Man stuff to use a zipper foot, just because it helps you get closer to that web line. As you can see, I'm really taking my time here, making sure to get really close to that web line, as well as going really slow and just carefully removing the pins. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. As I said, there's only 3 seams, so it's actually a very easy mask to sew up. Depending on how big you scaled the mask, you may need to install a zipper at the back of the mask to get into it. That was something I forgot to bring up at the beginning of this. I think I scaled the mask up to 115%. just because I knew that I would be using a face shell for this mask. I will not be covering the face shell in this video. I may do another video about it. It's pretty straightforward, but definitely let me know in the comments if you would like to see a video about a Raimi face shell tutorial. And with that, guys, that is pretty much it for this tutorial. There's not much else to it. I'll just speed up the rest of this footage and you can see me also sew up the chin darts, which were the hardest part of this mask to sew, just because you want to get close up to both your web lines without running over them. So here are the chin darts, and these are super short seams, but again, they are difficult to sew because you have to get so close to the web lines, and that just makes it really difficult. I think I had to redo this one a couple times, but you know, that's how sewing goes sometimes. Sometimes you make mistakes, but the nice thing about sewing is that normally you can undo things. I'll just speed up this footage and we'll get to the outro. And here's the mask all sewn up. Again, I'm so happy with how this came out, and hopefully I helped you make your very own Raimi mask at home. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This was a blast to make, and like I said earlier, let me know if you want a tutorial on the Raimi shell, because I would be happy to do that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you could please like and subscribe, that would be very much appreciated and it would really help me out. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.